My name is Jon Hastie, and I am talking today about transport and all things transport. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an expert, but I'm going to be talking about my several years of experience of kind of using various forms of transport. So, in terms of what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk about my experience. I'm going to mention driving trains, buses, and tubes. I'll probably mention flying as well later. Um, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of different modes of transport because I usually find it's easier to use a mix of different types, not always one. Going to talk about some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years to make it a bit easier with traveling. And going to talk about the different tools available to navigate your route, whichever mode of transport you're using. So, a little bit about my kind of experience and journey with transport is that I didn't used to feel very confident using transport at all, and I almost entirely relied on getting around by car because I didn't really know anything else. And when I was younger, in the 80s and 90s, long time ago now, but I had difficulties using transport because the access was so poor. Say, particularly in my childhood, before there was the Disability Discrimination Act, then access was really bad. I remember going on a school trip and using the train to go to London. Probably one of the only times I really used public transport when I was growing up. Because I had to sit in the guard's van next to all the luggage and bikes, and it was very cold, very noisy, and yeah, not really a pleasant experience at all. And most buses were not accessible, so that wasn't usually an option. Because as I got into my teenage years, it did become more accessible. So I know my local bus I could just about get on, and that was quite an experience for me. But where I lived was quite well out of the way, really. So the bus services were were not great. When I went to university, I deliberately chose a campus university so I wouldn't have to travel too often. And kind of halfway through the time I was at university, I got a car, and yeah, just really got a lot more access. But it was all by car to uh, to wherever I wanted to go. And then yeah, I never really used much public transport, even when the situation improved and it became more accessible because I got so used to using the car. And then I met my ex-husband, and he was really passionate about trains and tubes and public transport. So he kind of got me interested in it. He really didn't get on well traveling in the car. So that was something that kind of I learned to do was how to use public transport. And that gave me a lot more confidence to do it. But I think I was still relying on him for his knowledge and expertise. Because as you know, after I divorced from him, I was forced to do it by myself, and I think that was really empowering, and that gave me the independence and confidence that I really needed to just use public transport as and when it suits me, really. So it's been a bit of a journey, and I used to be pretty scared of using public transport. So if anybody here is going to be a bit nervous about it, then I can totally relate, and yeah, hopefully by sharing how it all works, I can give you the confidence to give it a try because it really is worth worth trying. Okay, so I just wanted to make a quick mention of all the disability activists, particularly in the 1990s in the UK. There were lots of kind of protests holding up buses and traffic, all about trying to get access for disabled people, wheelchair users specifically, on buses. And yeah, we wouldn't have the access we have today without the efforts of those campaigners. So I just wanted to kind of briefly mention those. So I'm going to start with driving. So I didn't really know much about the process of learning to drive, so I never actually drove a car myself. But I think had I known about the possibility when I was younger, I definitely would have wanted to do that. And I think driving is really essential. Um, Either having someone else who can drive for you, or being able to drive yourself. And I think it's really good for giving you independence. Um, so yeah, the pros are actually the top one's meant to be a con, but never mind. The con is that you need a driver or you have to learn how to drive. But the pros are you can travel everywhere. Um, you've got choice over when you leave and when you arrive. You can transport any equipment that you need. You can take breaks when you want, not in between the kind of schedules of public transport. Um, yeah, the con for me really needing a driver is a big deal because not all my carers drive, so it can limit me sometimes. Obviously, there's the cost of maintaining a car and the petrol. There's also, restrictions on where you can park. So I've got a really big vehicle and it's really hard to find somewhere to park it, particularly in central London. When you're kind of strapped in, if you've only got one carer and they're driving, it can be difficult to get help from them while you're on the move. And the ride can be pretty bumpy. And often, you need some support for posture and that kind of thing. So a few things I was going to mention about driving. Obviously, there's different ways that you can get a car. So there's the Motability scheme that I expect many people here are using. Um, so I won't go into that in too much detail, but essentially it's a car lease scheme in return for some of your disability benefits. So yeah, it's not free because you are giving up your mobility benefit in order to participate in the scheme. That I've found in the past that it can be cheaper to actually buy a second-hand vehicle rather than using the mobility scheme. But then that does mean you've got to pay for servicing and for repairs, and it really depends how lucky you are with that. If you need a lot of repairs, it can get very expensive, whereas Motability can cover the cost. So it's really a trade-off for whether or not you want to use that scheme. When you're choosing your car, you really need to think about what exactly you need it to do for you. So I originally started off with a smaller car, the Fiat Multipla. I don't think they make them anymore, but you could travel up front in the wheelchair. So you load it in from the back and you could drive right up to the passenger seat. That was really good for kind of being able to see where you needed to go. But the car wasn't very big, so when I came to going on holidays, I wanted to do a road trip. I had to hire out a bigger van to do that. So I've since, on the mobility scheme, got a large van with a tail lift at the back, and that's got enough space to carry everything. So they can take my hoist, they can take my shower chair, and get all of my luggage on my PA's luggage, and they can also uh, seat 4 people plus me. So I find that's really helpful. And it can be quite expensive to hire a wheelchair accessible vehicle. I see Colin in the chat mentioned that he was able to to do that. It's great that you can do that, but it is quite an expensive option. Um, One thing I wanted to mention about was the open driver insurance policy. So that is the insurance policy that allows anybody with a license to drive your car. It can be good if you've got a lot of carers and you don't want to have named people on the insurance. It's something you can get either privately or through Mateability, but it's a bit of a secret in Mateability, and they won't tell you about it unless you specifically ask for it. So you do need to be aware that it exists, basically. If you're driving in London, you need to be aware that not all boroughs operate in the same way. So some of them you can park in, like on double yellows, or you can do a park without time limit in a disabled bay. In other boroughs, there's other rules that you need to follow. Also, just if you're traveling abroad, you need to look into whether you need permission to do that on Motability, or you might need to change your insurance. But it's easy to do that. But you do need to make sure you actually get that permission first. So that's what I wanted to say about driving. Moving on to using the train. I'm going to be talking about public transport now. So, yeah, I really want to do a poll in a second. I'm just going to go through the slide and then we'll start a quick poll. So, the pros of using the train is you don't need a driver to do it. You can go with any, well, you can go by yourself or you can go with any care assistant. It's easier to adjust your position when you're moving. So that also means you can use the toilet during the journey as well. So that kind of makes it a bit more comfortable. You don't have to stop to do all that. You don't have to hunt for parking when you get to your destination. The journeys are often quicker by train, although that does depend where you're going. But some of the faster rail services are much quicker. Um, so getting into London for me is much quicker by train. It's also got good links to public transport, so you're gonna be ending up at a station that'll be well served by bus routes. Um, it can be quite expensive when travelling with others, so you can get a disabled person's rail card, but that doesn't really help you when you have to pay for carers. I mean, it does allow you to take one carer at a reduced price, but it's still kind of just not free, and it does add up. Can get quite expensive. Um, the train doesn't always go where you want it to go. You know, not everywhere is served by a train station. And you're often relying on staff to provide access by placing a ramp down for you. And obviously, there's risk of delays and then breakdowns and good strikes. And so, before we go any further, I just wanted to start a poll. I wanted to ask people how often you use public transport. And I'm thinking here, any kind of train or buses or the underground, that kind of thing. So here we go. So personally, I'd say I probably use it about weekly, maybe. Like I live quite close to a bus stop, and it goes into the town centre, so it's quite easy for me to get the bus into town. But I'll probably go to London maybe once a month and then use like buses and tubes and stuff. So we got a couple of people weekly, a couple of people a few times a year. It was definitely before I was confident using public transport. For me, it was definitely just a few times a year. Right. So I want to show just a quick video of me getting onto just a standard train. So this is the train that goes from Reading to London Paddington. And, yeah, just want to show a quick clip of how that works. It's just showing me getting on and off the train. And Jackie, can we have you on? We got it. Thank you. So here you see they can place the ramp. They usually have to fiddle around a bit, just making sure the ramp is secure. It's got two bolts that need to go into two holes. It's got to line up very precisely. They usually stand on it just to test that it's going to be okay, and then you can just drive up and then. On these trains, you're on the GWR trains. You're in the first class carriage, so it's fairly spacious. So there's me coming into it. This is one side. On the other side, there's another wheelchair space as well. I got a face shield on because this was, I think I recorded this when it was mid-COVID. But yeah, coming off is again very simple. You just gotta wait for someone to put the ramp down, and then you just wheel straight off. So it's really quite simple and it's quite spacious. It's not too difficult to do, but you are dependent on somebody showing up where you need to be with a ramp, which doesn't always go exactly to plan. So you can book assistance in advance. So if you know exactly when you're going to be traveling, then you can either use the new passenger assist app or you could use like different websites really. So you could use the website of the train company that you're traveling with, and you can make an assistance request. So it can be helpful, particularly if you're going to a station where it's not usually staffed, then you're more likely to get assistance. The app, I know, can be a bit buggy, and not all staff seem to use it, so it's not always the kind of, it doesn't always work. Basically, making a booking does then tie you to specific journey times. I find that quite annoying for me because on my local train station, there's a train to London about every 10 minutes, so you don't necessarily know which one you're going to get. Sometimes you just want to turn up and be able to travel when you want to. And so you do have a right to be able to turn up and go with pretty much all train companies, I think. But that that comes with conditions. So if you're turning up to an unstaffed station, you'll have to use a help point to contact staff, and it could take them a long time to actually source assistance for you. So I think it really depends on the station and like how regular the trains are, how well staffed it is as to whether or not you would want to book assistance. I have sometimes booked assistance and it's worked well, but I have also booked assistance and no one's turned up. So yeah, it's really you know judgment call for you to make as to whether you want to book. Sometimes it's good just to have that backup, knowing that you have something booked. Okay, so I was going to mention briefly about level boarding. So there are some trains, and I'm not talking about the underground here. I'm talking about trains, the regular national rail trains. There are some which do offer level boarding, but it is more rare. You you're more likely to get on the tube than the like national rail network, but it's still quite rare on the tube. But yeah, in terms of the kind of normal trains, you've got the Elizabeth line, which you can get from Reading into London. The the stations inside of London are all level boarding, so it means there's no step between the platform and the train. On the picture on the left, you can see that's level boarding. I've just come off that train. It's really flush to the platform because it's just a tiny bump, and then you're off the train. Whereas on the right, that's one of the steps that you could get, but you can often get worse steps than that. Can be quite a big difference in height, but yeah, level boarding makes it so much easier because you don't need a ramp and you can just just get all that up by yourself. Sheffield Supertram has level boarding. James says that's really good. Merseyrail have just recently upgraded all their stations, so they've chosen trains that are a bit lower, so they level up with the platform. Um, the others were fine. They raised all their platforms in the centre of London, so there's level boarding there. But when you get out of the centre, then it's going to normal platforms, so it's not level boarding. Um, they didn't go for the lower floor trains. They went for raising platforms, which just makes it a bit more complicated, really. Um, Greater Anglia bought lower floor trains, but they didn't fix any of the platforms, so it's kind of hit and miss as to whether or not it's going to be accessible. If the platform is the standard platform height, then it will be level boarding, but there can be kind of variations on that standard height. I was just going to mention there is a campaign for level boarding, and there's a website that you can go on to learn more about that. Um, but yeah, it's very possible to have level boarding by lowering the trains, but just not everywhere does it. Okay, moving on. I wanted to talk about the tube, and I've got a poll question I wanted to ask. So we'll do that first. Is have you ever travelled on the London Underground? So we'll start that now. So it looks like most people have, but not everybody. Well, that's good. Good that several people have. I yeah, I'm really glad that I do now use it. But it did take me a while to actually make the most of the access, just because I didn't really know what was available. So in terms of the tube, I think we're about to at about 92 tube stations now that have step-free access. Uh, well, I say that, but a lot of the accessible stations are like on a single line going away from London, so they're not central stations. So there's still a lot of inaccessible stations, particularly in the centre of London. And access on the tube can be via ramp or level boarding. I got a video in a minute and that shows both of them, both options. So if you get a ramp on the tube, then you need to contact staff when you get to the station, and they're going to ring ahead to the station you're traveling to, because they need to make sure they're coordinated and they will both put down ramps, so there will be someone there to meet you. Um, it's quite reliable. You can always trust that there will be somebody there, but it does take a bit of time for them to ring ahead and to organise it. They won't put you on the train until they know someone on the other end will be there with a ramp. But yeah, it can take a bit more time to do that. Some lines are a lot more accessible than others. The Bakerloon line is a bit rubbish, for example, but the Jubilee line and the Victoria line are pretty good. The tube can get very busy. It's not nice traveling when it's busy, but it is doable. I have done it. Goodbye Town has been really packed, and it feels like you're sardines, but it is manageable. But I would rather not do that, to be honest. So just gonna play a quick video showing me getting on and off tube, because I said I got two in here. One is the ramp, and one is the level boarding. So this one's level boarding. For a lot of the level boarding, there's a specific section of the platform that is slightly raised. That's where the level boarding will be. As you see, it's really smooth getting on and off there. And then now this is going to be one of the ones for the ramp. I can't remember exactly which one this is, but it might be the central line perhaps. Uh, but yeah, this is where I've gone through the process of getting a ramp, but because I said it takes a bit longer. The other thing we got me coming off of a level boarding station here. And again, pretty level, pretty smooth. But you gotta know where they are. Okay, so some of the things I wanted to mention about using the tube. On Twitter, the handle up down London is an account that automatically tracks whether lifts are functioning at different stations. That can be quite helpful because you want to just make sure there's no reason. I just see the chat and Sam mentioning about getting stuck. I've had that happen to me as well. So on the Jubilee line, there's big doors on the platform, and they've knocked my wheels into the gap. I think the one thing I've learned is that if the train has been sitting at the station for a while and you just get there, it might not be worth risking it because the doors close very quickly and very hard to it can be worth just waiting for another train. I think also if you go like a bit hesitantly onto the train, you're more likely to get your back wheels stuck. But I really only had that happen on the Jubilee line because when the train's quite empty, then the gap is bigger, so your wheels are more likely to get stuck. So I was going to mention also Disability Twitter. There's a lots of people on there who post about their access difficulties they've had. It can be worth kind of following that and posting about any problems you might have had. Also, you need to just allow sufficient time. So a lot of these stations on the tube, they have three lifts to get to the street level, and that down when you're go down the street to the train. So that's kind of even if you're just using one tube line, there's often six lifts that you've got to navigate. The trains might be crowded, then you might need to use ramps. So everything just takes longer, really. Generally try to avoid rush hour if you can. You don't have to, but it's just advisable. And I think sometimes I will be waiting for the train and I can see that there's one that obviously people have been waiting for a while, and then there's one like 2 minutes after. It's often better waiting for the second train because the first one is so packed and the second one can often be a lot emptier. And so, you need to judge it when you see the train whether you want to fight to get on it or not. Okay. I'm not going to play this video just for the interest of time. I want to give enough time for Q&A later, but I was just going to talk about this step-free tube challenge. So I did this a few years ago. And the, our mission was basically to visit every step-free station on the tube. Now this shows a kind of route of the stations that we visited. There were two of us doing it, and we managed to do it all in the space of a day. But it was a very long day. But it was quite interesting to see where all the step-free kind of routes could take you. It's not too bad. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about using the bus next. So let's see. Okay, so I looked this up because I wondered how much had changed and whether there were still any kind of no-go areas. But actually, 99% of buses in the UK are accessible. Not all coach services are, but wheelchair users have priority on the bus. So there was a legal case that basically established that users of prams and buggies have to make way or get off the bus in order to allow a wheelchair user to use the space. So the drivers are meant to enforce those rules. Um, but using the bus is fairly straightforward, but you need to make sure you know the bus number, obviously, but like you may need to know the stop number that you need to use as well. So uh, you can often do this on Google Maps. It will tell you what the letter of the stop is that you need. But in London, there can be often 3 or 4 stops very close together, and you need to know which one you should be at. And you also need to make sure you're on the right side of the road, going in the right direction. I know that might sound obvious, but I have definitely made that mistake myself before. And yeah, I think I almost got the bus going the wrong way. But yeah, that did happen. You just get off for the next stop and turn around. So in terms of kind of pros and cons again, like the train with the bus, you don't need a driver. You can adjust yourself and your position when you're on the move. Particularly in London, you've got better coverage with buses than train and tube. So as I said, there aren't so many accessible tube stations, and there are some areas of London that are quite hard to get to through the tube. So that's where the buses really come in handy. There's no need to hunt for parking. Then if you've got a bus pass, but yeah, this is the bus in my local area that I get to go into town. So I'm usually waiting. If you're at a stop where there's lots of buses going on different routes, I generally tend to kind of turn away if I don't want it, so they know I'm not getting that bus. So on this bus, the driver will get out and just unfold the ramp, and you could just go in and go round. On the London buses, there's usually a button uh, that you can press next to the door on the side. And that will alert the driver that you need the map. And then the buses, they're electric maps, so they will extend. They'll usually make an alarm sound and they will extend for you to get pulled off. There's usually a button on the bus that is separate from the usual button that people use to alert the driver they want to get off. And that button is to say that you need a ramp to get off. Pretty much every bus I've used all over the world has had that, some version of that. On the London buses, the button is blue. That's the one you want to press to let the driver know that you want to get off. So all different buses are different, like kind of obvious. That's some of them will be, the different spaces on different sides. Some of them will have multiple spaces, but not really in London. It's usually only one space in London. It can be a bit tricky to position yourself. With a lot of buses, there's often poles in the way. But yeah, you just need to kind of be careful. You need to reverse, get to position up against the kind of wall. The wall, that's kind of for safety. Yeah, the ramps could be either electric or manual, either on the front or the side. I do find it can be quite bumpy on the bus when there isn't any way to actually secure yourself. On some of the buses I've travelled on in Europe, there are like straps and stuff to secure the wheelchair. They do seem a bit safer, but yeah, I've never really had an issue. The suspension on the buses, it makes it feel better than driving, actually. But yeah, I think some of the buses I do struggle to get into. They're a bit more cramped, so if you're using a new bus, it's always good to try it at a quieter time, really. Okay, so you can get a bus pass. In England, then the bus pass will work with any local authority, and different areas have different rules for carers. So some of them will allow you to take a carer for free with you. Some of them don't. So it really depends on the area that you're in. But in London, in all the areas of London, you can take a carer for free. So not going to go into this too much because I'm conscious of time. But there were just three resources I wanted to mention. So obviously you've got Google Maps. You can select the public transport option, and that will tell you what route to take. If you click on the options, uh, when you do that, that will give you the wheelchair accessible option. But it doesn't give you a great deal of info on how to do that. The map provided from Transport for London gives a bit more information on the different stations, whether it's going to be level boarding, whether you need ramps, and the only problem with the TfL map, it's not always up to date and it doesn't tell you everything. So sometimes there'll be partial access that they just don't really mention. Um, so the step-free London map is quite good for giving more information, and for basically mention everything. So I'm thinking, for example, the Bakerloo line at Baker Street, you can't actually get off the train and get out of the station. But what you can do is, because it has level boarding, you can get off the train on the Bakerloo line and then you can switch to the Jubilee line, I think it is, going in the same direction. So as long as you don't actually want to leave the station, then you can use it as a way of changing lines. That's the kind of thing that the TfL map won't always tell you. So that's why it's good to look at the stuff on the map as well. But I think Google Maps has got a lot better in terms of kind of knowing these different routes. You did actually know about that interchange when I tried it earlier. So yeah, I think it's always the best way to do it. And get there with the buses, I find it makes it a lot easier. It tells you how many stops you're going to be going past, and means you can track where you are. So I find it really useful. Okay, so I'm just going to very briefly touch on flying as another mode of transport. So yeah, there's a lot we could say about this. So I'm just going to really brush over it for now. But the pros of flying is obviously faster journey times. You can visit more places, and you don't arrive tired after the however long car journey or journey of a ship. The cons are many. There's uncomfortable seats. Your wheelchair can be damaged. Long waits to get on and off the plane. There's no access to toilets, and it's difficult to transfer. So most airlines got airports, well, pretty much all of them really, provide assistance to disabled travellers. Your wheelchair will be put into the hold, and you need to transfer from your wheelchair into a narrow aisle chair, so in the top right corner there. And then you will need to transfer into a standard airline seat. And the toilets are small and mostly unusable, really. So you need a way of managing not going to the toilet. And yeah, I had a bit of a nightmare. I had like an external catheter that I was using, but because of all the moving and the transferring and moving into uncomfortable seats, it actually came loose, so it was no use. So there's a few comments in the chat. I'm going to come on to some of these. So the Eagle lifter can make the process of transferring a lot more comfortable. And so get the top picture there, you can see the Eagle hoist. So it's basically a hoist that's small enough to fit on an aircraft, and it means you can get lifted from your own wheelchair into, into the hoist into the airline seat. It's way more comfortable than the aisle chair, but they don't. Yeah, it doesn't have it everywhere. So I think in Orlando they do, um, but they definitely didn't in Miami where I went. So I had a lovely experience in Heathrow using the Eagle lift there. And then I got to Miami and it was a complete nightmare, being like roughly lifted by a big group of men that didn't really know what they were doing. And so yeah, it's gonna be great if we could get these everywhere, definitely. Most UK airport staff have received disability awareness training, and I do find that helps. In terms of your seating, you can obviously use various cushions and straps. I used my wheelchair cushion, my Roho cushions, but if you're using anything that's air-filled, you have to be aware that you need to let some air out because of the pressure on the airplane when you go above a certain altitude. I've traveled business class before, just once, because it's really expensive, but it means you can lay flat, and that is the only way that I can manage to go to the US, because it was such a long flight. Um, I use British Airways, which usually put wheelchairs and crates for transport, so it gives a bit more security. But you do need to check requirements around batteries that also remove breakable parts of your wheelchair as well before travelling. And then I briefly wanted to mention I saw Colin talk about his friend Alan. who is part of All Wheels Up, which is this colour logo on the left. And also we have Chris from Flying Disabled in the UK, and they're both campaigning really hard for allowing us to use your wheelchair in the aircraft cabin. And there's a prototype in the top right picture of putting a wheelchair on an airline seat. So I know they've had quite a lot of success with the campaign. Because yeah, I really hope it does take off, and we could all be using planes in our wheelchairs. I know I will be using planes a lot more if they can make this happen. So I just wanted to finish just with a few thoughts from me. So when you're traveling, things will go wrong. That is just life, and that's what we have to deal with. But most of the things can be easily resolved. So short of completely destroying your wheelchair on an airplane, then I think if assistance doesn't turn up, then you could just you might have to wait a bit, but you will get off the train. You can always press the emergency button on the train if no one shows up to give you assistance. That is an emergency, and you don't want the train going away with you still on it. So yeah, don't be afraid to press that. Um, the more you travel, the easier it gets. After a while, everything that can go wrong will have gone wrong, and you kind of know how to deal with it. I know that might sound a bit depressing, but actually it's really empowering knowing that you can manage if things go wrong. I would say if it's your first time traveling anywhere, try and keep it simple. Don't try and do really convoluted journeys. Try and start with a simple journey, and it just helps you to build your confidence. And I would say that don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do. That's for you to decide. But that also means don't tell yourself you can't do it just because you've heard from other people that it's difficult. You know, you don't know if you can do it until you try. So yeah, I would just say get out there and travel as much as you can, really. And yeah, thank you for listening. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments or anything. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat. That's been really good to see your comments on there.
Thank you so much, John. That was like amazing. Even I learned some tips and tricks, so thank you, much appreciated.
Cool.
We have got a few questions in the Q&A. So the first question is in relation to driving, and the question is it complicated to get an open driver policy?
I didn't find it that complicated, but I think I had uh, somebody from the disability organisation that helped manage my care package actually wrote a letter to Motability to say why this was needed. So it might be that you need somebody to kind of write evidence on your behalf to really to make the case. I didn't find it was too bad though. They didn't really put up much of a fight. Um, but yeah, you really need to know what you're asking for, and you need to know that it is possible and that they do it for other people.
Awesome. Sorry, just another question is in relation to flying. What is the most common thing to get damaged after having your wheelchair in the hold?
Mini joystick. So yeah, the sensitive joystick. If you've got one of those, it's gonna get broken most likely. So if you can dismantle it, which I have done in the past, and take it with you in a small bag, that's probably your best bet, really.
I will say it varies airline to airline, just to. put that out there. Some airlines are better than others, but
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Like anything you can take off and put in your bag, do.
Yes.
Also, a question about trains. What was your experience of London tubes? How was that? Like your first experience?
First experience, I think probably a bit terrifying, honestly, because particularly like there were some stations on the Jubilee line where they've got platform doors. Also, on the Elizabeth line as well, and that could when you go onto the platform and there's no train there, you you've got safety doors that prevent you going near the kind of being near the tracks. But I think when you are on a line that doesn't have those, I find it quite scary. Just seeing the empty train track, just think I could just accidentally slip on my joystick and I'd be in the gap. But it's like you're not gonna do that. It's just it's one of those like irrational fears that you have just because it looks a bit scary. But it's also quite noisy, particularly on the uh, Jubilee line. It feels like the train's gonna fall apart. God, just the screeching noise is horrendous. So yeah, it's all quite overstimulating and scary for your first time, I think.
Another question is, what is your favorite out of all of the modes of transport? What is your favorite? So you had cars, trains, tubes, and flying. What is your favorite mode of transport?
I don't think I really have a favorite. I think it really depends on the journey as to what I want to do. Uh, I've had good journeys on all of them. Because there's something nice about the tube being able to go on and off on a level boarding train and just get immediately where you want to. It's kind of that that feels really good in London. But yeah, I do like to be able to drive as well and kind of have my own personal space and that isn't invaded by other people and yeah, it feels nice and calm and relaxing. So I think it really depends what mood I'm in and what I'm trying to do because I don't enjoy sitting in the car for 3 hours getting into London through the traffic when I could do it in one day. Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just quickly scanning the chat. Sam asked, isn't the DLR step free as well?
Yes. Yeah, the
Yes.
DLR is also separate. Yes.
It's step free and often doesn't have a driver.
It's quite bumpy, not bumpy, quite a large bump to get onto the train sometimes. So it's
Awesome.
step free, but it's not as flush as some of the videos that I showed.
Um, I'm just scanning to if anyone has any more questions, you have about 30 seconds to get it
Okay.
in the chat. But while you're doing that, I'm gonna say thank you to John. Thank you so much for coming and giving us all of this information. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, everybody.
You.
Mhm.